The ceremonial hall fell silent when the child screamed. Not a cry of fear, but recognition. Princess Valera, 7 cycles old and, draped in ceremonial silver, pointed one trembling finger at the human standing among the diplomatic envoy. Her crystalline eyes widened until they caught every light in the vaulted chamber. The queen's hand, resting on the obsidian throne, tightened until her knuckles paled to white. Commander Elias Chen stood motionless. He wore the formal dress uniform of Earth's Unified Defense Corps, midnight blue with silver threading that caught the bioluminescent glow from the walls. His posture remained parade ground perfect, but his eyes tracked the princess with the quiet awareness of someone trained to assess every threat. Around him, the other human delegates shifted nervously. The Kelthar Honor Guard, each standing 3 heads taller than any human, moved their hands closer to their ceremonial blades. "That one," Valera whispered, her voice carrying in this sudden quiet. "Mother, that one has the mark." Queen Sereth rose from her throne, with the fluid grace of water finding its level. She descended the 7 steps slowly, her robes flowing like liquid mercury. Every eye in the chamber fixed on her except Chin's. His gaze remained on the princess, steady and evaluating. When the queen reached the floor, she gestured once. The honor guard closed ranks around the human delegation. "What mark does she mean?" Ambassador Torres asked, her diplomatic training keeping her voice level despite the armed warriors now flanking them. The queen did not answer. She approached Chin directly, ignoring every other human in the room. She stopped 3 paces away, close enough to speak without shouting, far enough to maintain royal distance. Her eyes, the same crystalline blue as her daughter's, studied his face with an intensity that made several delegates look away. "Remove your gloves," she said. Chin's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Your Majesty, I'm not sure. Remove them." The words carried no anger, no urgency. Just absolute certainty that they would be obeyed. Chin held her gaze for 3 heartbeats, then began pulling off the white ceremonial gloves finger by finger. He dropped them precisely onto the polished floor. When he raised his hands, every Kelthar in the chamber drew breath. Black marks covered both his palms and inner wrists. Not tattoos. The patterns moved slightly under the skin, flowing like oil on water, forming shapes that resembled ancient writing but shifted too quickly to read. The marks extended up his forearms, disappearing beneath his uniform sleeves. Ambassador Torres took an involuntary step back. "Chun, what the hell is that?" "Ma'am, I can explain. Silence." The queen's command cut through the rising murmur. She extended her own hand, palm up. Identical marks covered her skin, though hers glowed faintly with inner light. "Valera, come!" The princess descended from her cushioned seat beside the throne. 2 attendants moved to accompany her, but the queen's glance sent them back. Valera walked with the careful steps of a child trying very hard to be brave. When she reached her mother's side, she looked up at Chin with an expression that mixed wonder and something older, something that didn't belong on a 7-year-old's face. "Show him," the queen said softly. Valera extended both hands. The same marks covered her palms, but fainter, newer. They pulsed with an uncertain rhythm, like a heartbeat finding its pace. Chin's professional composure cracked. "That's not possible. The screening process, they told me I was the only one left." "Left?" The queen's voice remained calm, but something dangerous moved behind it. "How many were there?" The human delegation erupted in overlapping questions. Ambassador Torres demanded explanations. The security chief moved his hand toward his sidearm, then froze when a Kelthar blade appeared at his throat. Chin ignored all of it, his focus locked entirely on the child before him. "I need to know who you've been in contact with," he said, addressing the queen directly. "Which systems, which stations, which ships?" All of it. You are in no position to make demands, human. With respect, your majesty, if your daughter has those marks, then yes, I am. He turned his hands over, revealing more patterns on the backs. Because 23 days ago, everyone else who carried these disappeared. Every ship, every station, every colony world where they were stationed. Gone. No distress calls. No debris fields. Just empty space where they used to be. The Queen's expression didn't change, but every guard in the room shifted stance. Ambassador Torres made a small sound in her throat. Valera looked up at her mother with sudden fear. The envoy from Tarsus Prime, the Queen said. The trade summit. He bore similar marks. Where is he now? He left 4 days ago. His ship reported successful departure from our system. She paused. We received no further transmissions. Chin closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, the professional soldier had returned, all emotion locked behind training and discipline. Your Majesty, I need to speak with you and your daughter privately. Right now. Because if the pattern holds, we have maybe 72 hours before something finds us, and when it does, protocol says I'm supposed to kill anyone who carries these marks to prevent contamination. He met her crystalline gaze without flinching. That includes me. That includes the princess. And I will not let that happen. The Queen stood perfectly still for 5 seconds. Then she turned to her honor guard. Clear the hall. Lock the inner doors. No one enters without my direct command, not even the High Council. She looked back at Chin. You will tell me everything. And if I suspect for one moment that you mean my daughter harm, the marks on your hands will be the least of your concerns. Understood, Chin said quietly. The guards began herding everyone toward the exits. Ambassador Torres protested loudly until 2 Calthar warriors simply lifted her and carried her through the doors. The other humans went more quietly, casting backward glances at Chin. He didn't watch them go. His attention remained fixed on the child whose marks pulsed with the same rhythm as his own. When the massive doors sealed with a resonant boom, only 4 figures remained in the vast chamber. The Queen, the Princess, the human warrior, and the truth that had been hunting them all across the stars. Chin flexed his fingers, watching the pattern shift beneath his skin. It started 6 months ago. He began, his voice echoing in the empty space. On a world we probably should never have explored. The Queen took her daughter's hand. Show me everything. Outside the sealed doors, the Calthar honor guard took positions with weapons drawn. They had heard the humans' words. They had seen the marks. They knew their duty, but they also knew their queen. If she had chosen to hear this human out, then something far more dangerous than diplomatic tension had entered their world. In the guard captain's experience, when royalty and warriors spoke behind locked doors while children watched, empires either fell or transformed. He suspected they would know which long before the doors opened again. Inside the chamber, Chin began rolling up his sleeves. The marks covered his arms to the shoulders, moving in patterns that resembled star charts or perhaps something older. Valera watched with fascinated horror as the patterns on her own small hands began to match his rhythm exactly. The Queen's jaw tightened, but her grip on her daughter remained gentle. The planet was designated Echo 7, Chen continued. A failed colony from the first expansion. When our survey team landed, we found structures. Not human. Not Calthar. Something that predated both our species by millennia. He turned his arms, showing how the marks formed a continuous pattern. These weren't tattoos or infections. They were messages. Warnings. The previous inhabitants tried to contain something, and, when they couldn't, they marked themselves as carriers to warn others away. What did they contain? The Queen asked. Chin met her eyes. We don't know. but it's awake now. And it's looking for everyone who carries the marks. Everyone who touched what we found in those ruins. Valera's voice, small but clear, broke the heavy silence. The envoy came to my naming ceremony. He held my hands during the blessing ritual. His skin was warm, and the patterns glowed. She looked up at Chen. Yours are glowing too. He looked down. She was right. The marks had begun to emit a faint phosphorescence, barely visible in the chamber's light. The Queen's marks answered with their own glow, stronger and steadier. Valera's pulsed between the two frequencies, as if trying to find harmony. How long do we have? The Queen asked. If the pattern holds, 3 days. Maybe less now that 3 of us are in the same location. It seems to triangulate faster when carriers are grouped. Chen's expression hardened. But I didn't come here to run or hide. I came because I think I found something in the Earth archives. Something about the Kelthar that your own histories don't record. The Queen's crystalline eyes narrowed. Explain. Your people didn't evolve on your homeworld, Chen said quietly. You were placed there, seeded, by the same species that built the ruins on Echo 7. And I think these marks are how they're calling their children home. The chamber fell into absolute silence. The Queen's hand tightened on Valera's shoulder. The princess looked between the two adults, sensing the weight of revelation she couldn't fully understand. Outside, the guard captain pressed his audio receptor against the door, then stepped back quickly and signaled his warriors to prepare for anything. Something had just changed in that room. Something fundamental. And when the doors finally opened, the alliance between Earth and the Kelthar Empire would either be forged in shared crisis or shattered by ancient truths neither species was ready to face. Chen's marks flared brighter. The Queen's answered. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, something old and patient and utterly inhuman registered the signal and began to move. The Queen's mind raced through centuries of carefully maintained history, searching for cracks in the narrative her people had built their civilization upon. She found them everywhere now, patterns she had been trained not to see. The founding myths that made no evolutionary sense. The gaps in the archaeological record. The way Kelthar ruins on different worlds shared identical architecture despite being separated by impossibly vast distances, with no evidence of spacefaring technology. She had been taught these were mysteries to honor, not questions to answer. Now a human warrior with marks matching her daughter's stood before her, calling everything into question. The council will declare you a heretic, she said. They will say you lied to create division. I know. Chen's voice held no judgment. On Earth, they classified everything I found. Locked it away. Called me compromised. I was 3 days from being permanently detained when the first carriers started vanishing. He paused. I broke quarantine to come here because your daughter's genetic signature appeared in the Echo 7 database. A 78% match to the DNA we found in the ruins. The highest correlation we've recorded in any living being. Valera looked up sharply. What does that mean? The Queen knelt, bringing herself to eye level with her daughter. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of every royal who had ever delivered unbearable truth with dignity. It means you are special in ways we are only beginning to understand. It means the blood in your veins is older than our empire, perhaps older than our recorded history. And it means, she paused, choosing her words with surgical precision, it means some part of you belongs to something we cannot yet name. Am I dangerous? The princess's question came out small and frightened. No. Chen answered before the Queen could. The marks don't make you dangerous. They make you visible. There's a difference. He lowered himself to one knee, bringing his face level with hers. I've carried these for 6 months. They haven't hurt me, haven't controlled me. but they have made me a target. Do you understand? Valera nodded slowly. The thing you said is coming. It wants to find us. Yes. Can we hide? No. The Queen rose, her decision made. We prepare. Captain Thane. Her voice carried through the sealed doors. The captain entered immediately, his weapon drawn, his eyes scanning for threats. Assemble the High Council. Summon the fleet commanders. And bring me Chief Archivist Meln. Now. The captain hesitated only a fraction of a second before bowing and withdrawing. The Queen turned back to Chin. You said you found something in Earth's archives. I assume you also found something you did not share with your superiors. A ghost of a smile touched Chen's face. The diplomatic corps trained you well. I was leading border fleets before you were born, human. I know when a warrior holds back his final strike. What else did you find? Chun reached into his uniform and withdrew a data crystal, small and black and humming with encrypted information. Coordinates. The Echo 7 ruins weren't the first contact. There were others, scattered across the expansion zone. Each one abandoned after the survey teams developed the marks. But there's a pattern to the locations. They form a map. To what? To a facility. Massive. Hidden in a stellar nursery where our sensors can't properly scan. The first humans who found it never came back, but they transmitted data fragments before they disappeared. Blueprints. Genetic sequences. And one word, repeated in 17 different dead languages. He turned the crystal in his fingers. Threshold. The Queen took the crystal, her marks glowing brighter as her fingers closed around it. Valera watched the exchange with the peculiar intensity of children who sense adult fears being carefully hidden. You believe this facility is where the marks originated. I believe it's where we were meant to go. All of us. Humans and Kelther and probably species we haven't encountered yet. I think the marks are invitations. Chen's expression hardened. Or summons. The entities that come for carriers. I don't think they're hunting us. I think they're hurting us. Pushing us toward the threshold. Then we go, the Queen said simply. Your Majesty, we go, Commander Chun, because if what you say is true, running is impossible and hiding is temporary. The marks will be passed to others. More children will be born carrying this genetic legacy. Better to face what calls us than to let it hunt us across generations. She looked down at Valera. Better to know than to fear. The princess straightened, responding to her mother's tone even through her fear. I want to be brave. You already are. The Queen placed one hand on her daughter's head, a gesture of benediction and protection. Bravery is not the absence of fear. It is the choice to act despite it. Remember this, Valera. This moment. When your mother chose to sail toward the storm rather than pretend safe harbors existed. The doors opened again. High counselors began filing in, their expressions ranging from confusion to outrage. Chief Archivist Meln, ancient even by Kelther standards, moved slowly with the aid of a crystalline staff. Her eyes found the marks on the Queen's hands and widened in recognition. You know, the Queen said to her. Not a question. I suspected. Meln's voice rasped like wine through dead leaves. The old texts speak of the marked ones. Those who carry the blood of the forerunners. We were taught they were myths. Allegories for genetic purity and royal lineage. She looked at Valera, and something like sorrow crossed her weathered face. I see now we were taught to look away from the truth. Explain. Quickly. The archivist tapped her staff against the floor, and holographic displays erupted around them. Ancient texts in Proto-Kelther, star charts that showed constellations and configurations impossible for any currently known stellar drift patterns, genetic maps that spiraled into incomprehensible complexity. The Forerunners seeded life across multiple systems. Not randomly. Deliberately. Creating species with specific traits, specific capabilities. The Kelthar were designed to thrive in high-gravity environments with complex social hierarchies. Humans. She nodded to Chin. Your species was optimized for adaptability and aggression. Different tools for different purposes. Tools, Ambassador Torres said from the doorway, having pushed past the guards. You're saying we were engineered? Created? For what? I don't know, Meln admitted. That knowledge was lost or deliberately hidden millennia ago. But the marks? Those appear in individuals who carry the highest concentration of Forerunner genetic material. They are not afflictions. They are activation sequences. Activating what? Chen demanded. The next phase. Meln manipulated the holographic display, bringing up an image that made everyone in the chamber draw breath. A structure hung in space, impossibly vast, built from materials that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. This was built at the dawn of Kelthar history. We called it the First Temple. Then, we lost it. Every expedition that tried to locate it disappeared without trace. After the fifth attempt, the High Council declared it forbidden knowledge and struck all references from official history. The Queen studied the image. It matches Chen's coordinates. Then, the threshold has been waiting for us all along. Meln looked at Valera, and her expression softened. The child should not go. This is beyond her understanding. The child, Valera said clearly, is standing right here. And if this thing wants me, it will find me anywhere. Mother is right. Better to meet it than to hide. Chin laughed once, short and surprised. She has your courage, your majesty. She has her own. The Queen turned to address the assembled council. I am taking a fleet to these coordinates. Any ship that wishes to join me may do so voluntarily. Any that prefer to remain here will not be judged for that choice. But I will have transparency. No more buried history. No more forbidden knowledge. If we were created as tools, I intend to discover what we were built to accomplish. And if the Forerunners seek to reclaim their property, her marks flared bright enough to cast shadows across the chamber. They will find we have become something beyond their designs. The council erupted in debate. Some called for caution, others for immediate military mobilization, still others for sealing the coordinates and forbidding all travel. The Queen listened to none of it. She was already moving, gesturing for Chen and Valera to follow. They walked through corridors of living crystal that pulsed with bioluminescent rhythms. Guards fell into formation around them without being ordered. Word was spreading through the palace, through the city, across the planetary networks. The Queen had made her decision. The marks had been revealed. Everything was changing. Chen matched the Queen's pace easily despite her longer stride. Your Majesty, you should know. The entities that hunt marked carriers aren't necessarily hostile. Every encounter has been bloodless. They just take people, beam them up, jump to hyperspace, vanish. We don't know if they're prisoners or passengers. Then we shall ask them when we arrive. The Queen's tone brooked no argument. How many carriers remain in known space? By my last count, 14. Scattered across human and Kelthar territory. 5 are military personnel. 3 are scientists. The rest are civilians who made contact during trade missions or exploration. He paused. If we're going to do this, we should try to gather them. Strength in numbers. Agreed. Draft the communications. My fleet will begin assembly within 12 hours. They reached the royal family's private chambers. Valera's attendants waited inside, their faces tight with barely suppressed questions. The Queen spoke to them in rapid Kelthar, too fast for Chen's translation implant to follow fully, but He caught the essential meaning. Pack for a long voyage. Prepare the child. Tell no one where they were going. When the attendants left, the queen finally allowed exhaustion to touch her features. She sat on a cushioned bench, pulling Valera beside her. Commander Chun, your honesty has likely saved both our species. I have one final question before we commit to this course. Your Majesty, do you believe the Forerunners are benevolent? Chen considered the question with the weight it deserved. Outside the windows, the twin moons of the Kelthar homeworld rose in tandem, bathing the city in silver light. Somewhere out there, ships were being readied. Weapons were being loaded. Crews were saying goodbye to families they might never see again. And, across the vast darkness, something ancient and vast was moving toward a rendezvous that had been predetermined before either of their civilizations had learned to control fire. No, he said finally. I don't believe they're benevolent. But I don't believe they're malevolent either. I think they're beyond such categories. We're trying to understand motivations that might not translate to anything we'd recognize as thought. But here's what I do know. He held up his marked hands. These appeared to guide us, not control us. They activate in response to our choices, not theirs. Whatever the Forerunners want, they're giving us the option to walk toward it or away from it. That suggests they value something. Maybe agency. Maybe potential. Maybe just data collection. But it's more than we get from a species that saw us as mere property. Valera touched her own marks gently. Do you think they remember making us? The question held such pure innocence that both adults paused. Chen knelt again, bringing himself to her level one more time. I think creators always remember their creations, Princess. The question is whether they still care about them. Whether they see us as what we were or what we become. And that, he smiled faintly. That's what we're going to find out. The Queen stood, decision crystallized into action. Then, we leave at dawn. Chun, you will travel on the flagship. Valera and I will accompany you. We face this together, as representatives of both our peoples. Ambassador Torres won't like being left behind. Ambassador Torres will command the diplomatic corps in my absence. I suspect she will be quite busy managing the political aftermath of this revelation. The Queen's smile held sharp edges. Besides, this is not a diplomatic mission. This is something far older and far more fundamental. We are going to meet our makers, Commander Chun. And we are going to demand answers. Chun saluted, crisp and formal. I'll have my team ready, Your Majesty. One more thing. The Queen's voice stopped him at the door. When we find what waits at the threshold, when we stand before the Forerunners or their inheritors, or whatever has been summoning them marked, I want you to remember something. You are not tools. Neither are we. What we were made to be and what we have chosen to become are different things. If they seek to reclaim us, to override our autonomy with ancient programming, we fight. Chin finished quietly. We fight. The Queen confirmed. Humans and Kelthar, standing together against gods if necessary. Are you prepared for that? Chin looked at his hands, at the marks that had cost him his career, his safety, and possibly his future. Then he looked at the child watching him with crystalline eyes full of trust and terror and terrible courage. Your Majesty, I've been preparing for this since the first person disappeared. Whatever's waiting out there, it doesn't get to take us without our consent. Not the princess. Not you. Not any of us. Good. The Queen placed one hand on her daughter's shoulder. Then we sail at dawn, and we meet our destiny with eyes wide open and weapons ready. Let the Forerunners discover what their tools have become. Let them face the children who learn to forge themselves into something new. The moons climbed higher. The marks glowed brighter. And, across the palace, across the system, across the scattered fragments of two civilizations about to discover their shared origin, the word spread like wildfire through dry grass. The queen was going to meet the gods. The human with the marks would sail beside her. And the princess, 7 cycles old and, carrying the weight of ancient bloodlines, would face whatever waited at the threshold with the courage of someone who had chosen to be brave. In the royal shipyards, the flagship began its final preparations. Engineers worked through the night, loading supplies for a journey of unknown duration to a destination that existed on no official charts. Fleet commanders assembled their finest crews, volunteers all, who knew they might be sailing toward wonder or oblivion. And, in the palace archives, Meln worked frantically to copy every fragment of forbidden knowledge, every hint about the Forerunners, every clue that might help them understand what they would find. Chin stood at a window, watching the activity below. His tactical mind cataloged everything he saw: weapon placements, shield generators, escape pod configurations. Beside him, reflected in the crystal glass, he saw the queen approach. "Do you think we're making a mistake?" she asked quietly. "I think we're out of good options," Chin replied. "So we choose the brave option instead. That's not a mistake. That's just what warriors do when the universe stops offering easy answers. My daughter is not a warrior. No, Your Majesty. She's something better. She's proof that even beings designed for a specific purpose can exceed their programming. She's hope." The queen considered this. "Your species has a saying about hope, don't they? Something about feathers and storms? Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul," Chin quoted. Emily Dickinson, an ancient poet. She understood that hope isn't a strategy or a plan. It's a choice to believe tomorrow might be better, even when all evidence suggests otherwise. "Then we sail on feathers and choice," the queen said. "How very fragile. How very strong." Below them, the first ship powered up its engines. The glow reflected off the crystal architecture, turning the entire palace into a beacon. More ships followed. Within an hour, the sky blazed with light as the fleet assembled. Hundreds of vessels, human and Kelthar, gathering for a journey that would answer questions older than civilization itself. Chen's communication device chimed. He glanced at it and smiled faintly. "The other carriers are responding. 9 confirmed joining us. 3 still unreachable. 2 declined. The 2 who declined, are they safe?" "For now. I've arranged protection details. If the hurting entities come for them, they'll at least have warning." He paused. "Your Majesty, when we reach the threshold, the marks might activate fully. We don't know what that means. We could be changed, transformed. The people who go into that facility might not be the same ones who come out." "I know." The queen looked at her reflection in the window, at the marks glowing on her hands, at the crown she would likely wear until she died or until something far stranger claimed her. "But the alternative is to live in fear, passing these marks to our children and their children, never knowing what we were truly created for. I refuse to condemn future generations to that ignorance. Better to face the truth, whatever it costs. Even if the truth is unbearable? Especially then. Bearable truths require no courage." She turned from the window. "Get some rest, Commander Chen. Tomorrow we discover whether we are slaves awakening to our chains or children finally coming home. Either way, we will meet it standing tall." Chen saluted and withdrew. Alone in the chamber, the queen allowed herself one moment of pure fear. Then she locked it away, compartmentalized it with every other terror she had faced in her long reign, and became once more the absolute sovereign her people needed. She walked to Valera's sleeping chamber, and found her daughter still awake, staring at her marked hands. "Does it hurt?" the queen asked softly. "No. It feels like something waiting." Like a door I haven't opened yet. Valera looked up. Are you frightened? Terrified, the Queen admitted. But terror and duty often walk hand in hand. We do not have the luxury of indulging the former at the expense of the latter. I don't understand all of it. The Forerunners and the Marks and the Threshold. But I understand that you're doing this to protect me. To protect everyone. Valera's voice steadied. I won't be afraid if you're not. Oh, my brave child. I am desperately afraid. But I am also certain this is right. Hold both truths. Let them balance each other. They sat together in the darkness, marked hands clasped, while outside the fleet continued its assembly. Dawn came slowly, painting the sky in shades of violet and gold. And, when the first light touched the palace spires, the Queen and the Princess and the human warrior with striking presence walked together toward the flagship, toward the stars, toward answers that would reshape everything they knew about themselves and their place in a universe far stranger and older than either civilization had dared imagine. The threshold was waiting. It had been waiting for millennia. And now, finally, the marked ones were coming home to discover what home truly meant. The flagship, Eternal Radiance, dwarfed every other vessel in the assembled fleet. Its hull gleamed with the same crystalline properties as Kelthar architecture, but reinforced with human-designed ablative armor that could withstand sustained weapons fire. The synthesis of two civilizations' best technology, created for a journey neither had imagined possible mere hours ago. Chin stood at the base of the boarding ramp, watching crew members load the final supplies, when Ambassador Torres appeared beside him. You're stealing our best chance at a diplomatic breakthrough, she said without preamble. I'm following the evidence where it leads. Into the unknown. With a child. The optics alone. This isn't about optics, Ambassador. This is about survival. If we're right, every marked carrier across known space is being hunted or herded toward a single destination. We can go willingly and prepared, or we can be taken unwillingly and ignorant. I know which option I prefer. Torres studied his face, and her professional mask slipped slightly. You really believe the Forerunners are out there? Waiting. I believe something is waiting. Whether it's the original creators, or their AI inheritors, or something else entirely, that's what we're going to find out. He met her eyes. If we don't come back, make sure the data crystal gets analyzed. Everything I found about Echo 7, about the pattern of disappearances, about the genetic correlations. It might help the next generation survive what we couldn't. If you don't come back, Chun, there might not be a next generation. Not one that's free. She glanced toward the palace where the Queen was making her final arrangements. You're gambling two civilizations on a hunch. I'm gambling them on hope. There's a difference. Before Torres could respond, a commotion erupted near one of the supply shuttles. Security personnel rushed forward as a figure in tattered clothing stumbled down the ramp. Chin recognized the gait, the posture, before he saw the face. Dr. Sarah Curry, xenobiologist, one of the original Echo 7 survey team. She had been missing for 3 months. Curry! Chin ran forward, catching her as she collapsed. Her hands bore the marks, but they pulsed erratically, like a failing heartbeat. Where have you been? What happened? Her eyes focused on him with difficulty. They let me go. Sent me back. As a message. She gripped his arm with surprising strength. Don't go to the threshold. It's not what you think. The Forerunners aren't waiting to welcome us. There. Her marks flared brilliant white, and she convulsed. Chin held her while medics rushed forward with scanners and emergency supplies. The Queen arrived moments later with Valera in tow, both their marks beginning to pulse in synchronization with Curry's chaotic rhythm. Get her to medical, the Queen ordered. I want full scans and every detail of her last 3 months extracted and analyzed immediately. They rushed Curie to the flagship's medical bay. Chin stayed with her while the Kelthar doctors worked, their equipment far more advanced than human medicine, but struggling with whatever was happening to the marks. Curie drifted in and out of consciousness, muttering fragments that made no coherent sense. Chin activated his recording device and caught what he could. Not creators, inheritors. The threshold is a gate. They're using us as keys. Genetic sequences unlock the next phase. But the cost is... She seized again, her back arching. The marks spread visibly, creeping up her neck toward her face. The lead physician, a Kelthar named Sorol, stepped back with an expression Chin had never seen on the typically stoic species. Pure fear. "What is it?" Chin demanded. "The marks are consuming her, rewriting her cellular structure at the molecular level. If this continues, in approximately 6 hours, she will cease to be human in any meaningful biological sense." The Queen entered the medical bay, having left Valera with her attendants. "Can you stop it? I can try to slow it. But this process appears to be triggered by proximity to high concentrations of mark-bearers. The more of us gather together, the faster it accelerates." Sorol gestured to the scanners. "Your marks and Commander Chin's have increased their activity by 47% since Dr. Curie arrived. The princess's marks have increased by 62%. You're saying gathering the carriers accelerates whatever this is. I'm saying we might be triggering the very activation sequence we fear. And if we proceed to the threshold with multiple carriers aboard, we may arrive already transformed into whatever the Forerunners designed us to become." Chin looked down at Curie, at the marks that had spread to cover her face like a web of living circuitry. She opened her eyes, and seemed to see him clearly for the first time since her arrival. "You have to choose," she whispered. "Human or instrument. They'll offer you transcendence. They'll show you what you could be. And it will be beautiful and terrible and everything you never knew you wanted. But you'll lose what you are. All of you. Every carrier. We'll become something else. Something that serves their purpose." "What purpose? What are they trying to accomplish?" "They're not trying. They've already succeeded. We're not the first experiment. Not even the 100th. They've been seeding galaxies with life for longer than our sun has burned. Creating, testing, harvesting the successful variants. We were meant to be temporary from the beginning. Stepping stones to something greater." The Queen's voice cut through like a blade. "Then, we are nothing but experiments. Tools to be discarded." "No." Curie smiled, and it transformed her marked face into something almost transcendent. "That's the beautiful part. We exceeded parameters. Humans and Kelthar both. We developed too fast, adapted too well, became too complex too quickly. We're the unexpected success. The variants that evolve beyond their design specs. And they want to study us. To learn how consciousness emerges from their carefully tuned genetic sequences. To understand how tools became people. And if we refuse?" Chin asked. "They'll wait. They have time. Geological time. They'll watch our civilizations rise and fall, collect data from our ruins, and start again with the next iteration. Unless..." Her marks flared one final time, then began to dim. "Unless you use what they made you into against them. Unless you become the instruments they designed, but retain enough of yourselves to turn the music toward a different purpose." She closed her eyes. The monitor showed her vital signs stabilizing, but her genetic structure had fundamentally changed. Whatever came out of the medical bay would wear Sarah Curie's face and carry her memories, but the person she had been was already gone. Sorol worked in silence for several minutes before speaking. "The transformation appears to have stabilized." She'll survive, but I cannot predict what she'll be like when she wakes fully. How long until the same thing happens to the rest of us? The Queen asked. Unknown. The process seems individually variable. Dr. Curry was exposed to something at the threshold that accelerated her transformation. If we avoid direct contact with whatever facility exists there, you might have weeks or months. But the princess... Toral hesitated. Her genetic correlation to the Forerunner baseline is so high that proximity alone might trigger rapid transformation. Your Majesty, I must formally recommend that she remain behind. No. Valera's voice came from the doorway. She had evaded her attendants and stood watching the scene with those crystal-clear eyes that missed nothing. If I stay, I'll change anyway. At least if I go, I'll understand why. I'll see what they wanted me to become. I deserve that much. The Queen moved to object, but Chen spoke first. She's right. The marks are active regardless of location. At least at the threshold, we'll have context. We'll understand the transformation as it happens. You're asking me to take my 7-year-old daughter into the heart of an alien facility that turns people into something no longer human. I'm asking you to give her the chance to face her fate with knowledge instead of fear. You said it yourself, Your Majesty. Better to know than to hide. The Queen looked at her daughter, at her marked hands, at the choice that was no choice at all. Finally she nodded. We proceed as planned. All carriers aboard the Eternal Radiance. But Dr. Soral, you will monitor our transformations every step of the way. And if we begin to lose ourselves before reaching the threshold, you will sedate us and turn the fleet around. The mission does not supersede our humanity. Is that understood? Understood, Your Majesty. Chen left the medical bay and walked to the observation deck. The fleet had finished assembly. 300 ships, representing the combined might of 2 civilizations, ready to sail into absolute unknown territory. His communication device showed confirmation from the other carriers. 9 more marked individuals en route to rendezvous points along the planned trajectory. 9 more people about to discover whether they were human or instrument or something entirely unprecedented. He activated his personal log, something he'd maintained since entering military service decades ago. Commander Elias Chen, Day 1 of the Threshold mission. We depart in 3 hours for coordinates that may represent first contact with our creators or a trap designed to harvest the most successful genetic experiments. Dr. Curry's testimony suggests both might be true simultaneously. The Queen has shown remarkable courage in choosing knowledge over safety. The princess. He paused, searching for words. The princess might be the key to everything. Her genetic correlation is unprecedented. If the Forerunners are looking for proof that their experiment succeeded beyond expectations, she's the evidence. He stopped recording as footsteps approached. Valera entered the observation deck alone, moving with the quiet determination of a child who had made an adult decision. You shouldn't be wandering the ship by yourself, Chen said gently. The guards are following at a respectful distance. Mother commanded it. She stood beside him, looking out at the assembled fleet. Are you afraid of changing? Of not being human anymore? Every second. But I'm more afraid of not knowing why. Of dying ignorant. Dr. Curry said it was beautiful. She also said it was terrible. Can something be both? Chen smiled despite everything. Princess, I think the most important things usually are. Love is beautiful and terrible. Courage is beautiful and terrible. Truth is beautiful and terrible. Maybe transformation is just another item on that list. She touched the glass, her small marked hand leaving a faint glow. When we get to the threshold, will you stay with Mother and me? I know you have military duties, but I'll stay with you. I promise. Whatever happens, you won't face it alone. Thank you. She was quiet for a moment. Commander Chun, can I ask you something? Something I can't ask Mother because she'll worry? Of course. What if being the instrument they designed me to be is better than being who I am? What if the transformation makes me smarter, stronger, more capable? Would it be wrong to want that? To choose it? The question struck at the heart of everything Chen had been wrestling with since Echo 7. That's not wrong, Princess. That's human. We always want to be better than we are. But here's the thing, better by whose definition? If you transform into exactly what the Forerunners designed, you might be more capable, but you'd be fulfilling their purpose, not yours. The question isn't whether the transformation is superior. The question is whether you get to choose. And if I don't get to choose? Then, we fight like hell to take that choice back. Valera considered this, then nodded slowly. Mother was right about you. You think like a warrior but feel like a philosopher. It's strange. Most warriors do, in my experience. We spend a lot of time waiting between battles. Philosophy helps pass the time. The Queen's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. All personnel to stations. We depart in 30 minutes. This is a volunteer mission. Anyone who wishes to disembark has 20 minutes to do so without judgment or consequence. For those who remain, thank you. You are about to become part of history, for better or worse. Chen watched the fleet through the observation window. Not a single ship powered down. Not a single crew member requested transfer. They were going into the unknown together, united by curiosity and courage and the desperate hope that knowledge could somehow save them. The final 20 minutes passed in focused activity. Systems checks, weapon calibrations, course plotting through regions of space that existed on no standard charts. The coordinates Chen had discovered pointed toward a stellar nursery called the Veiled Cluster, where intense radiation and magnetic interference made detailed scanning impossible. Perfect place to hide something massive. Perfect place for an ambush. Chen made his way to the bridge. The Queen stood at the command platform, Valera beside her in a smaller chair designed for the child's presence. The bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, Kelther and human personnel integrated seamlessly after months of joint training exercises. On the main view screen, the fleet assembled in formation. Commander Chen, the Queen acknowledged. Take the tactical station. You have more experience with unknown threats than any Kelther officer. Yes, Your Majesty. He slid into the seat, his hands moving over controls designed for larger Kelther fingers, but adapted for human use. Weapon systems showed green. Shields at full capacity. Every ship in the fleet reporting ready status. All ships. The Queen addressed the fleet. We sail now into mystery. Some of you are here because you carry the marks. Others because you believe in what we seek. All of you because you chose courage over comfort. Whatever we find at the threshold, know that you faced it freely. That matters. That will always matter. She gestured to the navigation officer. Engage. The Eternal Radiance shuddered as its massive engines powered to full. Around it, 300 ships moved in perfect synchronization, their combined engine glow turning the space around the Kelther homeworld into a temporary star. Then, one by one, they jumped to faster-than-light travel. Reality twisted, compressed, and released them into the strange physics of hyperspace. Chen watched his instruments. His marks began to pulse in rhythm with the ship's engines, a synchronization he'd never experienced before. Across the bridge, every marked carrier's hands glowed brighter. Valera gasped softly, and the Queen gripped her daughter's shoulder. Dr. Sorrel, the Queen said calmly. Report. The medical officer's voice came through crisp and clear. All carriers showing increased mark activity. No adverse effects yet. The princess's transformation rate has increased by 12%. Still within acceptable parameters. Understood. Monitor closely and report any changes immediately. The journey would take 6 days, at maximum faster than light speed. 6 days of watching the marks grow brighter, of feeling the transformation creep through their cells, of knowing that every hour brought them closer to answers that might cost them their humanity. Chen settled into the tactical station and began running simulations. Combat scenarios, evacuation protocols, first contact procedures. Anything to keep his mind occupied, to avoid thinking about Curry's marked face and her terrible, beautiful smile. Beside him, Valera asked her mother quiet questions about the stars, about hyperspace travel, about what they might find. The Queen answered each one with patience and honesty, never hiding the truth, but framing it in ways a child could process. Chen listened to them and thought about the strange path that had brought him here. From Earth's military academy to the Echo 7 Discovery, to a Kelther flagship sailing toward the origin point of consciousness itself. The marks pulsed. The engines hummed. And somewhere ahead, beyond the veils of radiation and time and carefully constructed ignorance, the threshold waited to show them what they had been created to become. Whether they would still be themselves when they emerged from that revelation remained the question that no amount of courage or preparation could answer. They could only sail forward and hope that whatever tools the Forerunners had designed would prove sharp enough to cut the chains their makers had forged. The first day passed in tense routine. The second brought the first external contact. A ship appeared on their sensors, matching speed and trajectory. Not Kelther. Not human. Something else entirely, built from geometries that hurt to look at too long. It broadcast no signals, made no threatening moves, simply paced them through hyperspace like a curious predator tracking potential prey. Chen's tactical board lit up with warnings. Your Majesty, unknown vessel off the port bow. Configuration doesn't match any known species. Hail them! Communications tried every frequency, every protocol. The strange ship remained silent. But its hull began to glow with patterns that matched the marks on every carrier's hands exactly. They're not attacking, the Queen observed. They're escorting. Or herding. Adding us to the collection, Chen agreed grimly. Curry was right. We're not being hunted. We're being guided home. The strange ship stayed with them for 16 hours, then vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. But its presence changed something fundamental in the fleet's mood. They were no longer alone in the darkness. They were being watched, shepherded, directed toward a destination that had been waiting since before their ancestors learned to speak. And the marks grew brighter with each passing hour, counting down to a transformation none of them could prevent and all of them desperately needed to understand.